Don't skip this video. This is not an algorithm accident. You arrived here for a heavenly purpose. Yes, you arrived here because something greater than the algorithm decided that you need to hear what I have to say right now. And I'm going to tell you exactly why you're here. You've been feeling a weight in your chest that no one around you can understand. This exhaustion that follows you isn't just physical, it's spiritual. It's the weight of carrying something you still don't know how to name, but that burns inside you every night when you try to sleep. This message isn't for everyone. It's only for those who have walked through fire and came out the other side with invisible scars. For those who carry a pain that no one sees, but that everyone feels when you walk into a room. This message is only for you. You are not like the others. And that's why I understand why you're exhausted, why people seek you out when they need answers, but disappear when you need support, why you've become the spiritual crutch for so many, while your own journey has taken a back seat. And I need to tell you something that will change the way you see everything you've lived through until now. What you went through wasn't punishment. It was strategic preparation. Every closed door, every rejection, every moment of deafening silence. None of it was wasted. It was the necessary crucible to forge who you need to become. Because something has already started to move, and you're about to discover why everything you lived through needed to happen exactly the way it happened. You always knew you were different. Since childhood, there was something in you that didn't quite fit into the boxes the world tried to put you in. While others seemed comfortable following the script they were given, you felt a constant restlessness, as if there was music playing on a frequency that only you could hear, and you tried to ignore it, tried to be normal, tried to convince yourself that this feeling was just insecurity, immaturity, lack of focus. But it never went away, did it? I'm going to show you now the signs that have been around you your entire life. And when you recognize these patterns, something inside you will awaken irreversibly. Remember that time you lost an opportunity that seemed perfect? That job, that relationship, that project you were certain was yours. And at the last moment, everything collapsed without logical explanation. You blamed yourself, thought you weren't good enough, but look where that closed door led you afterward. Look who you became because that didn't work out. These weren't coincidences. They were strategic redirections. The universe, or God, if you prefer, was repositioning you on the board because you have a signature of purpose that doesn't fit common paths. And there's more. Have you noticed how certain people entered your life at exactly the right moment? It wasn't chance. That unexpected encounter in the wrong place, at the wrong time, that became one of the most important connections of your journey. That random conversation that completely changed your perspective on something you were facing. You called it luck. I call it frequency alignment. Because there's a spiritual narrative happening behind every detail of your everyday life. And you, without realizing it, have been the protagonist of a story much bigger than you imagine. Think about it. How many times have you felt an inexplicable impulse to do something or not to do it, and later discovered that impulse saved you from a tragedy or led you to a transformative encounter? That day, you decided to change your route, delay a trip, decline an invitation, and later found out that if you had followed the original plan, something terrible would have happened. You called it intuition. I tell you, it was divine direction. There's a higher intelligence orchestrating the invisible movements of your life, and it has been guiding you even when you didn't notice, even when you thought you were lost, alone, walking in the dark without direction. But I know you've had moments when you doubted all of this, There were nights when you looked at the ceiling and thought, "Am I going crazy? Am I too dramatic? Is this feeling of having a greater purpose just a fantasy of my mind to cope with an ordinary life?" And on those nights, the weight of doubt almost suffocated you. Let me tell you something that will bring you total clarity right now. That doubt was also part of the process. Because every chosen one goes through the valley of disbelief. Every protagonist faces the moment when they question whether they're really the hero of the story, or just an extra who deluded themselves. But you wouldn't be tormented by that question if the answer were no. Ordinary people don't question themselves about purpose. They simply exist, consume, repeat. But you were marked with a sacred restlessness, a spiritual hunger that never lets you settle. And that, my friend, is the clearest proof that you carry something that needs to be delivered to the world. Now pay attention to this. Have you noticed how the difficulties in your life were never random? They always touched the same wounds, always tested the same areas. Relationships teaching you about abandonment. Finances teaching you about trust. Health teaching you about limits. This wasn't cosmic cruelty. It was specialized training. Because you're not being prepared for a generic life. You're being forged for a specific mission. And this mission requires you to master exactly what hurt you most. Because you're going to need to teach others to walk through what you walked through. You are the protagonist who was trained in your own pain to become the guide for those still lost in it. And I'm going to prove to you why every second of suffering you lived had a mathematical, strategic, and irreversible purpose in building who you're becoming. More than mathematical and strategic, an ethereal purpose, coming from an authority that cannot be questioned by mere human reason. Limited, and everything will make sense to you when I show you the biblical passage that perfectly exemplifies your current moment and the possible future rewards. We need to talk about the years no one saw. Those periods when you woke up and felt like you were carrying the world on your shoulders. When you looked in the mirror and barely recognized who was on the other side. When every conversation seemed to demand an energy you simply didn't have anymore. You tried to explain it to someone, tried to put into words the emptiness that inhabited your chest. But how do you explain an invisible weight? How do you describe a battle that leaves no visible marks on your skin? So you stopped trying and shut down. And that's when the real desert began. That arid place where nothing bloomed, where every step seemed to sink you deeper into the sand, where the silence was so deafening that you started to doubt if your own voice still existed. I know what happened in that desert. You lost people who swore they'd always be by your side. Relationships you fed with all your energy simply evaporated when you most needed reciprocity. You discovered you were everyone's spiritual crutch, the one everyone sought out in moments of crisis, but who was left alone when it was your turn to fall apart. And the loneliness wasn't just social, it was existential. There were nights when you felt that God Himself had abandoned you. You prayed, screamed, negotiated, and received only silence as a response, as if heaven had closed exactly when you most needed a word, a sign, anything that would confirm you weren't crazy for believing your life had meaning. But let me reveal to you what was really happening in that silence. You weren't being punished. You were being refined in the hottest furnace that exists, the furnace of absence of external validation. Because God was destroying every dependency you had on human applause, on social approval, on external confirmation. He was teaching you to anchor your identity in the invisible. Think about gold. It doesn't become pure at a warm temperature. It needs the extreme heat that melts all the impurities. that separates the precious metal from everything that's worthless. And you, my friend, went through the same process. Every rejection burned away a piece of pride. Every betrayal melted away a piece of naivety. Every closed door eliminated a piece of dependence on the world. And what remained was pure essence. I understand that you look back and see only waste, years that seem to lead nowhere, efforts that produced no visible fruit, sacrifices that no one witnessed or acknowledged. But I guarantee you, nothing was wasted. That period of metanoia, of deep transformation of the mind, was necessary. You couldn't carry the anointing that's coming with the mindset you had before. Your mental bandwidth needed to be expanded. Your capacity to withstand pressure needed to be tested and approved. Because the chosen don't go through common processes. They go through what I call the crucible of invisibility, that place where you do everything right, but no one applauds, where you work at double the intensity, but don't receive half the recognition, where you're being forged in secret for a public revelation that's still to come. And that revelation is closer than you imagine, and the Bible confirms it. Something changed recently, didn't it? You've been feeling it. A different kind of restlessness. It's no longer that heavy anxiety of the desert. It's a spiritual stirring you can't name, as if something is moving in the invisible layers of reality, preparing a total rearrangement of your life. And you're right. Something really has started to move. While you were in the crucible, invisible to the eyes of the world, God was repositioning pieces on the spiritual chessboard, closing old cycles, cutting cords that tied you to people and situations that had already fulfilled their role, opening portals that were sealed until you were ready. And now, you are ready. I know you still don't see it clearly, but pay attention to the signs. You've been feeling a different kind of tiredness in recent weeks. It's no longer that exhaustion from battle. It's the tiredness of someone who's about to change seasons. Like the athlete who feels their body aching in the last training session before the final competition. This recent spiritual fatigue? It's the symptom of transition. Your spirit knows that the old version of you is dying, and every death generates discomfort. But on the other side of that death is a rebirth so powerful that you can't even imagine yet who you're about to become, because the frequency of alignment has changed. Have you noticed how certain people started to distance themselves from your life without conflict, without fighting? They just disappeared, while others, completely unexpected, started to show up bringing conversations that seem to read your soul. This isn't coincidence, it's frequency adjustment. You're vibrating at a new spiritual octave. And everything that no longer resonates with this frequency is being automatically removed from your orbit. Not because you're better than anyone, but because your mission now requires a level of focus that can't be diluted by misaligned connections. And there's more happening now that you haven't fully realized yet. The prayers you made years ago, those that seemed to have been ignored, are being answered at this exact moment. Not in the way you asked, because you asked based on what you knew, but in the way God always planned, based on what you need to fulfill your destiny. You are entering the season of answers. Those questions that tormented you for years are about to make sense. Those whys you screamed to heaven without getting a response, they're about to reveal themselves with a clarity so crystal clear that you'll fall to your knees. Because when God answers after years of silence, He doesn't whisper, He thunders. And I need to prepare you now for what comes next. Because the promise God made about your life, the one you almost gave up believing, is about to leave the invisible world and materialize in your physical reality in a way so undeniable that even those who doubted you will have to acknowledge it. The change has already begun, and you are exactly where you should be at this moment. Now the moment has arrived, where the sacred text will show your inevitable destiny, hand-picked for you and by you. Before you were born, before you took your first step in this desert, before every rejection and every closed door, God had already written a word over your life that cannot be canceled. And that word is recorded in Romans 8:28. Let me read it to you with the weight it deserves. And we know that all things work together for good for those who love God, for those who are called according to His purpose. Read it again, slowly. All. The things. It doesn't say some things. It doesn't say the good things. It says all things. Even what shattered you. Even that betrayal that made you question whether it was worth continuing to believe in people. Even that loss that left you on your knees on the ground without strength to get up. All of it is working together, laboring together, conspiring in favor of your good. I know it's hard to believe this when you look back and see the rubble, but let me show you what really happened. That rejection that destroyed you, it saved you from a path that would lead you away from your true purpose. That person who abandoned you, they freed up the space they were occupying illegally because someone aligned with your destiny needed to enter. That financial collapse that humiliated you, it killed the pride that would prevent you from receiving the supernatural provision that's coming. That illness that paralyzed you, it taught you to depend on a strength that doesn't come from you. And you're going to need that lesson when the anointing increases. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was an accident. Nothing was divine cruelty. Everything was spiritual warfare strategy to position you exactly where you need to be when the revelation arrives. And there's something else in this verse you need to understand. It wasn't written for everyone. It was written for those who love God, for those who are called according to His purpose. You are called, and that's why your process could never be ordinary. Isaiah 48:10 says, "Behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction." The furnace of affliction. It wasn't a poetic metaphor. It was literal. You lived it, felt the unbearable heat, thought you would be consumed, but you came out the other side as pure gold. And now comes the part that will give you chills. Jeremiah 29:11 declares, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for peace and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." Read that again. God says, "I know." When you didn't know, He knew. When you were lost, He knew the way. When you thought it was over, He knew it was only the beginning. The future you desire, what burns in your chest, that dream you almost gave up on, that vision that seemed impossible, wasn't planted in you by accident. It was God Himself who put it there. And He doesn't put dreams in you to frustrate you. He puts them there to direct you. Everything you went through was the necessary preparation for you to bear the weight of the promise. Because you're not being prepared to receive crumbs. You're being prepared to carry a revelation that will impact generations. And this promise is already decreed, already sealed, already moving toward you. Now I ask you a question. Will you take the necessary step? The season has changed, and you feel it. In the coming days and weeks, you're going to start noticing something different. Ideas that seemed impossible before will start making sense. Connections you tried to force for years will simply flow. Doors that were locked will open without you needing to force them. This is the season of manifestation. You're going to feel a clarity of purpose you haven't felt in years. That mental confusion that haunted you, it's dissipating. That anxiety about the future, it's being replaced by an unshakable certainty that you're exactly on the right path. And pay attention. Unexpected people are going to start reaching out to you. Opportunities you weren't even seeking will knock on your door. Resources that seemed impossible will appear in supernatural ways, because everything that was prepared in secret now begins to reveal itself in public. The peace you're going to feel isn't the absence of storm. It's authority over it. You won't be shaken by external opinions anymore. You won't doubt your identity anymore. You won't question whether it's worth it anymore. You'll simply know, and that knowledge will make you unstoppable. Now I need you to do something. If you recognize this transition in your life, if you felt every word of this video echo in your soul, I want you to go to the comments right now and write one word, a single word that represents the decree you're making over this new season. It could be ready. It could be accepted. It could be now. Write that word and seal the commitment to the version of you that's being born at this exact moment. And if this message impacted you, share it. Because someone in your life needs to hear this today. Someone is in the same desert you walked through. And maybe this is the word that will sustain that person to keep going. Your new season has begun. Welcome to the other side. To confirm that you've accepted this journey, say down here in the comments, what made you certain that you were chosen for prosperity, happiness, and greatness? And to watch another video that will unlock your mind forever, understanding your own God-given strength, click on the video appearing on your screen right now.